Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Recently I have been painting a lot of seascapes and I've had a few requests to do a tutorial showing you how I've been painting these. So today I'm going to show you how I painted this seascape using gouache paint. And my setup for today starts with me putting down some washi tape on top of the paper just so I can have a clean border and so that it sticks to the table while I paint. And the paper I'm using today is actually Art Spectrum watercolor paper, which is 300 GSM and 100% cotton. Usually I use Canon watercolor paper, but this is what I'm using today. Then I have my palette and also 2 jars of water and then just a cloth to dry my brushes off on. And the paints I'm using are Winsor Newton gouache paints, but I also supplement them with Art Spectrum gouache. All of the supplies that I use for this painting will be listed in the description box below, so feel free to refer to that. And to start off, I'm just using a pencil and I'm lightly penciling in where the halfway line is, but I'm leaving a bit more space for the water. And then I'm just going to pencil in roughly where the seafoam goes up to, and I also like to go in with my Kneadable eraser just to lighten up the lines a bit. The colors that I'm starting off with are ultramarine blue, primary red and white. And to start, I'm using my angular brush. You can use any sort of flat brush, and all I'm doing is just mixing a light bluish purple color. So I'm using a generous amount of white and I'm mixing in a bit of the ultramarine blue. Then I'm adding in a tiny bit of the primary red and I'm just trying to mix a nice purple blue color. And then I'll start to lay that in the top left corner. Then I'll just adjust the paint mixture as I need, so I'll add in a little bit more red if I want the mixture to be a bit more purple, and I'll add in a bit more white if I want it to be a bit lighter. And to also adjust the consistency of my paint, I make sure to dip my brush in the clean water just to dilute out the paint a little bit so that it can spread more easily on the paper. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to transition out the color into a lighter pinker color. So I add in more white and a bit more red, and then I just lay in those colors. And don't worry if you find there's a bit of a harsh line between the transition. We will come back and lay some clouds on top of here. So if it's not completely smoothed out, that's okay. So I just keep moving from the left corner of the painting down to the bottom right corner, and the paint needs to get lighter and lighter because the light source is coming from the right side, so we want the right side to be really bright so it looks like there's a setting sun and the light is hitting from the right side. Now we're going to add in a bit of the orange glow coming from the sun. So what I'm doing is I put down some permanent yellow deep on my palette, and then I'm picking up that yellow color and mixing it with the primary red to create a warm peachy color, and I mix it with a lot of white so it's quite light. Then I'm just painting a line across where the sky meets the water, and I just adjust the paint to be different shades of orange and peach and just lay those colors in there horizontally and just try to bring them up and create a setting sun. Now I'm switching to a round brush and I have some primary yellow on my palette, and I've just mixed it with a lot of white to create a really light yellow, and I'm going to fill in this area on the right side with this yellow, and I'm just going to try and blend that into the orange that I have. So I still have my other brush next to me with the orange paint on it, and after I've laid in this yellow, what I'll do is I'll pick up the flat brush again and I'll go in and try to blend out the yellow that I've just laid in so that it blends in nice and smoothly with the orange. Then there's just a bit of back and forth as I switch between the two brushes and just try to blend out this area as smoothly as possible while adding in some of that warm yellow glow from the sun. To help me blend out this area, I also lighten the paint a bit more and just do some vertical strokes across the right side to try and blend that part out into the lighter area above it. And I'll also use white paint as well to help me blend that part out. Then I want to add in some more color into the sky. So again, I'm mixing this peachy orangey pink color and I'm just bringing it up across the middle of the sky. And again, I try to blend it out with the purple as much as I can. Now I'm going back into my pinkish purple mixture and I just want to darken it a bit and add a bit more interest into the sky. So I just felt like the right hand side was a little bit too light for my liking. So I'm trying to mix a color that's just a little bit darker and I'm just sweeping that into the sky and just adding a bit more interest there. I'm now going in with the spray bottle just to mist my paints because I can see that they're starting to dry up just a little bit and I just want to keep them fresh on the palette. So just a reminder to mist your paints if you are also using a normal palette like I am. To paint in the clouds, what I do is I lay on the color that I want. So I'm putting in a darkish kind of purple color and then I go in with a clean flat brush and I just blend it out. So I'm trying to smooth out the edges, but I'm doing it very lightly. So I'm only picking up a tiny bit of paint as I do it. Then I mix a bit of pink and I also lay that color on, and then after I lay in those colors, then again I will go in with my flat brush and try to blend out those colors so they're not so harsh. And I'm just looking at the reference photo and picking out the colors in the clouds that I can see and just laying them on there. So the trick here is to use a clean flat brush and try to really lightly blend out the colors as much as you can. So when I'm blending out the colors, I'm doing it ever so lightly because if you use too much pressure, you could pick up the colors underneath and start to muddy them, whereas we're just trying to lightly blend out the colors we've just laid on. Then if I feel like I've picked up too much paint from all the blending, I'll clean off my brush and go in again with a clean brush and just blend out the final bits. I also pick up some pure white paint and just try to lay that in where the orange area is, just to create some more highlights in the sky. And to just give the clouds a bit more depth, I'm going to try and highlight some areas. So I'm mixing some lighter colors by adding in a bit more white and just laying those on the brightest parts of the clouds. And I'm also blending them out again. But some areas I'm just going to go in with some really light white and yellow and just try and lay on some highlights there. Now we can move on to painting in the water, and for this I'm just going to lay down the base color first. So I'm mixing a warm orange color by mixing in the permanent yellow deep with a little bit of primary red, and I'm just going to paint that part right up to where the waterline is. And you can see I'm mostly just using horizontal strokes, and I'm using my flat brush on its side so I can get these thin lines while I try to sweep in the colors and just try to blend it out. So it's quite easy to blend out this area because I'm using the same pile of gouache paint, but I'm just adding in different amounts of different colored paints each time. So I'm just building on the same base color, and then when I lay it on the paper, it's not too different from the previous color, so it's easy for me to try and blend it out. And because I'm working fairly quickly, the gouache hasn't dried on the paper, so if you just keep doing this and just keep moving your way down, it should be quite easy to blend it out and transition the color. Now that I want to transition it to a lighter pink color, I just start a new mixture and I just use primary red and lots of white to create a really light pink, and I just sweep that across the paper and I'll try and blend that into the previous color above. And in order to get that smooth transition, what I do is I try to mix the in-between color. So you can see here, I've added in a bit more of the primary red and the yellow to mix an in-between color, which just matches perfectly between the orange mixture and the light pink that I laid on. And then on the right side, we have more of a yellowish glow, because essentially we are trying to mimic what the sky looks like. So it's like a mirror image as it reflects down onto the water. So the colors are quite similar in that sense. And then for the bottom part, I'm laying in a bit of a darker pink color, and I just lay that right up to where the foam line is. For the last part, I'm going back into my purple mixture and I'm mixing a color that's similar to the color of the sky in the top left corner, and I'm just painting in the rest of the area there. And for this part, you actually don't have to blend it out into the colors above, because this is where the sea foam goes up to, so we will be covering up this line later, so it doesn't matter if there's a harsh edge. I'm misting my paints again with my spray bottle just to keep them fresh on the palette, and now we are going to mix a dark purplish red color, and we're going to use this to paint in a line where the water goes up to. So we're trying to create the shadow that sits below the seafoam. Then I'm just adding a bit more red into the mixture, and I'm going to use this to create some more shadows as well. So essentially when it comes to painting in the water here and the foam that sits on top of the water, you just have to put in a shadow underneath and then paint in the foam on top. Now we're going to focus on painting in this line over here. So what I'm doing is I'm using a light purple mixture, and I'm just painting along where we put the shadow before, and then after I lay in that, I'm going to go in with a lighter color. So this is a lighter purple color, and I'm laying in along the top. Then I'm going to go in with an even lighter color that's almost white and just paint in what the foam looks like there. So I'm just shaping it out first. Now I'm switching to a really thin brush. So this is a size 00 round brush, and it is the smallest round brush that I have, and I'm going to use this to help me to paint in an even darker shadow. Now I switch back to my other round brush, and I'm going to pick up some more white paint and start to put in some finer details. So I'm trying to paint in what the seafoam looks like as it sort of crashes over on top. So I'm just using the tip of my brush to get these little lines across the bottom. Then here I'm picking up pure white paint, and I'm trying to lay this in where the brightest highlights are. So this step will really make this seafoam look really realistic, and you just want to lay on the white right on the top so that it looks like it's really 3D. For the final details here, I'm going back with my really thin round brush and just adding in a bit more shadow beneath the seafoam. So I'm just creating a bit more shadow and depth to it, and just adding in those small details that make it look a lot more realistic. And then I'm switching back to my larger round brush, and I'm just picking up white paint and just doing some horizontal lines across to create some ripples in the water. Now I'm using white paint, and I'm going to put that right on top all of the shadow lines we did before. So this is what makes the sea foam look really realistic, because we've put down that shadow line already. So when we put the white on top, it looks as though the foam is coming up and sitting on top of the water. So I think the easiest way to recreate this is just to use the darker shadow color and just add in those details and put in the lines and put in those shadows, and you can do it one section at a time. So I'm starting off with the right hand side, and I'm just putting down all the shadows, and then once I've done that, then I'm going to go in with my white paint, and I'm just going to put the white right on top of each of the shadow lines that I just did. Once I've done the right hand side, then I decide to move on to the left hand side, and I'm just repeating the process of putting down the shadow lines first and just doing little dots here and there. And then once I've done that, again I can go in with my white paint and lay that on top. And you can also do it the other way around if you want as well. You can put down the white paint first and then paint in the shadows underneath. To make it look just a bit more realistic, I'm going in with some really light purple and I'm just adding some in-between shadow color. So I'm adding this to the left-hand side of some of the bigger sea foams, and it's just sitting right on top of the shadow and underneath the white, so that way they just look like they're sitting more on top of the water. For some final details in the water, I'm just using the same light purple mixture and just doing a few horizontal strokes here and there, because I'm just trying to tie together the front of the water with the far away parts, and I'm just adding in a bit of seafoam here and there, so that way they just look a bit more connected. And now for my favorite part of the painting, which is painting in the silhouettes of the birds. So I'm using again the thinnest round brush that I have, and I'm very carefully placing in these birds. So the thinner you can do it, the more realistic they will look. This part can be a little tricky because you do need quite a steady hand in order to paint in these little details, but something that I found that helped was making sure that the consistency of your paint is quite fluid, so that way the paint easily comes off the brush and you don't have to be picking up paint in between each stroke. That's all there is to this painting. I hope you guys found it helpful and that you'll give it a go. If you have any questions, just leave it down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely day. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.